Heavenly Father, today we put on the full armor to protect us against attack. We put on the belt of truth to protect against lies and deception. We put on the breastplate of righteousness to protect our hearts from the temptations. We put the gospel of peace on our feet to walk in your light, peace, and freedom with the Holy Spirit. We rebuke anxious thoughts. We take up your shield of faith for protection to block and destroy all the darts and threats thrown at us by the enemy. We put on the helmet of salvation to cover our minds and thoughts, reminding us that we are children of a mighty King. We are forgiven, set free, saved by the blood of Jesus. We take up the sword of the Spirit, your living word, that has the power to demolish strongholds and is sharper than any double-edged sword. We come to you, Lord, in prayer daily. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm absolutely honored to have back on the show for a third appearance, survivor and child abuse advocate, podcaster, woman of God, independent researcher, investigative journalist and educator, and one of my dear friends, Jaymee Jay. A little bit about Jaymee in case you're new here, or if you missed either of Jaymee's previous episodes on this channel or on other channels. Jaymee's journey, forged in the fires of a challenging upbringing of traditional family dysfunction, has uniquely shaped her into a beacon of brilliance and compassion, lighting up and inspiring the paths of countless lives with her remarkable achievements. In a world of possibilities at her fingertips, she could have chosen any pursuit to invest her boundless energy, intellect, and voice. Yet, in an act of unparalleled selflessness, Jaymee has devoted herself to unraveling the complexities of SRA, mind control, and organized abuse, serving as a tireless advocate for survivors and whistleblowers of these heinous crimes against humanity. I stand in absolute awe of her unwavering resolve to step into this war, a battle she could have easily observed from a safe distance, never uttering a word. To me, she is nothing short of a hero, fearlessly raising her voice as an ally, fully aware of the risks, the targets it paints on her back, and the absence of any material reward. Her courage is a clarion call, a testament to bravery that resonates deeply within me, and I know it will stir the same reverence in all of you, whether you're a survivor or not. She's a warrior of compassion, justice, education, and love. One thing I really love about Jaymee is that she is a true student, an educated scholar, and genuine advocate in the survivor community and movement. I love getting the excited texts from her when she comes across a hot topic that sets her heart and soul ablaze. Her passion for helping survivors and the injustices she feels to her core, despite not being a survivor of the horror she talks about and advocates against herself, motivates and inspires me on such a deep level. I always know it's going to be an engaging discussion when the passion ignites in her heart, and today is no different. On previous episodes, Jaymee has shed a light on the satanic panic and drove home the root of the issue being a massive cover-up spanning decades and decades. And on her second appearance was a compassionate and urgent call to action regarding public safety and protection for survivors in the wake of public figures who appear to be working against survivors despite inviting them onto their public platforms and showing support for the movement on their social media platforms. Today, we're going to be expanding on both of these topics as a recent interview on public figure and clinical psychologist Jordan Peterson's podcast surfaced, featuring Zena Schreck, daughter of infamous Satanist Anton LaVey. This episode struck a nerve for many reasons that Jaymee will be covering today, including that it is undeniably an attempt at a continual cover-up of SRA and the denial of its existence entirely. In relation to this topic, we've identified an army of what we will be terming SRA deniers in our wake, showing up on podcasts like Peterson's and on other popular platforms like TikTok, where large audiences seem to be being funneled to deniers of satanic ritual abuse and governmental mind control, who can provide a large-scale distribution of information against survivors. And it's the new way that survivors are being, might I say it, intentionally gaslit with mass information dissemination across popular channels in the same way that the satanic panic was able to do utilizing mainstream media. Let's be clear, the media machine is cunning. The scripted model we once saw on TV has shape-shifted into alternative channels, deliberately designed to undermine survivors and the momentum this community has bled to build. There are dark forces seething at our progress, enraged by the light we're casting into their shadows. We must sharpen our discernment, spot the evil lurking in plain sight, and summon the courage within us to strike back. And no one, and I mean no one, is more adept at piercing through that darkness and taking a stand than Jaymee. I've been super buzzed with anticipation since she pitched this topic, knowing her voice would deliver a thunderclap of wisdom and awareness for all of you. Jaymee is a radiant beacon in this treacherous world, a soul whose integrity and heart threaten evil's very foundation. She's the kind of hero we should all strive to emulate. I'm constantly taking notes from her passion and execution against these dark forces, letting her example hone my own blade as we all charge forward together on the battlefield. This episode is a battle cry and call to action, and Jaymee, per usual, has stepped up to courageously lead the charge. Before wrapping up the introduction of today's guest, I'd like to share just a couple quick reminders and updates. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, sharing any information privately with me, or submitting a written testimony for my upcoming book series, or to be featured on a Substack article, you can reach out to me via email at imagineabetterworld2020@gmail.com or standbysurvivors@protonmail.com. Additionally, I've teamed up with some of my favorite brands to offer you guys exclusive discount codes on products I love, such as Rife Technology frequency machines and CZTL's premium methylene blue. You can find all the relevant links and codes along with other resources in the show notes. Your support across all platforms is greatly appreciated, especially as I've had to shift to alternative streaming platforms such as Rumble and X following the termination of my former YouTube channel. I've also just started a new YouTube channel you guys can subscribe to at the handle at Imagination Podcast Official that I'll be rebuilding as well. This transition to multiple platforms is crucial to continue sharing vital information to the public and disclosure community. Thank you all wholeheartedly for helping to make the imagination the safest space on the internet for survivor, whistleblower, advocate, and educator disclosures. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming today's guest of honor, hero for the children, passionate anti-abuse advocate, content creator, and passionate voice for the voiceless, Jaymee Jay. Jaymee, thank you so much for being here again with us today. It's an honor to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the intro. I thought the last one was good, and now you've even one up that one. So I hope I can just live up to like that somewhat. But yeah, thank you. That was just like, wow. um, okay, so yeah, this topic today, I think this interview with Jordan Peterson and Zena Schreck, or she just goes by Zeena now. I think it was about 6 months ago. I just became aware of it last week, and I just instantly got extremely triggered as soon as I saw it, and I messaged Emma immediately and was like, not gonna happen. Like, we have to say something about this, because it was just, I just can't believe in this day and age, after all of the information that's available and out there, that there's this level of ignorance still and just blatant denial. And so I really want to go over a lot of that today, and just kind of do my best to basically break down some of the history, some of the belief systems about these people, and why, we need to have our discernment, super high. And one of the main things I want to talk about today is like the difference in meaning of words. And so when you see interviews like this and people are talking about something, a lot of times we're projecting our own meaning of words onto what they're talking about, and they aren't talking about the same things that we're talking about. And so that's something I want to go over today. But this story is actually really, really big. So I'm going to do my best to, try and focus it down to a way where I'm just getting the main points across. We've provided a whole bunch of links that people can go and look at after to back up everything I'm saying, if people want to look into this themselves, because it actually connects to so many things and so much history. And with these particular individuals have been around for so long, they're connected to so many bigger things that it's just like, a whole book could be really written on this. So I did provide a lot of links for people to kind of go back and look into things themselves. But yeah, I just want to talk today just kind of basically about this interview and some of the history behind the Church of Satan, some of their beliefs, and Michael Aquino in particular, as we know from Emma's channel. And I've read almost every survivor's account or book out there that is available. I still have a few to go, but I do keep really on top of it. And I can tell you that Michael Aquino, it has been named by so many people. I don't even, like, the list can just go on. And I actually do want to make a public list for people to add to, because I was writing down names. I had a page full of people that have named him as an abuser. So I mean, that's just like, it's time for this to end. Just kind of like, the evidence is all there. He's been named for so long by so many people that if people want to still try and minimize, rationalize, and deny the reality of satanic ritual abuse, it's like, that's just an act of ignorance, a willful act of ignorance at this point.
100%. And there's literally nobody better to talk about this. And I love that you take such a special interest in consuming all the material that you do, because I feel like you have this special ability because you've dove into so many different testimonies and you've read so many books on whether it's a survivor or whether it's something like the Church of Satan, that you've taken an interest to understanding that when something does come up in mainstream media or on a public platform or on a headline, you have so much knowledge that you can sort of reverse engineer what's being said and actually read what's between the lines in a way that a lot of people can't, So I saw this interview pop up, but I didn't even listen to it whenever I saw it. And I didn't see it right away, but I saw it, I think, a few months ago. But I was like, oh my gosh, I know that that's going to trigger me and that it's just going to be this bullshit thing. So like, I don't really even want to listen to it. I have, I'm constantly listening to other stuff. I'm like studying the survivors coming on to interview, and so I didn't even listen to it. So whenever you reached out, I listened to it immediately and just felt like my heart drop. And I was like, I can't believe that this was released on a public platform and that like literally I haven't heard anybody in the survivor community talk about it. And like, this is a big deal. This was a huge platform, And so I'm really thrilled that you decided to listen and that you, again, have done all the research that you have so you can help us see between the lines of like what's attacking us. I think last episode you said something like, we're at a new level of this war, that there's a different type of war happening now, and it's being disseminated in ways that are going to fly under the radar a lot of times, and that's intentional. They're not going to put this necessarily on TV like how they used to, because they know that people aren't watching TV and believing it whenever they do. There's a lot of people that moved away and are now looking to alternative media platforms. They're taking to platforms like TikTok, Twitter to get their news, and they think because they're not watching the TV that what they're seeing is true. And especially when you see an interview from, say, a clinical psychologist, somebody that's very highly regarded in society, like Jordan Peterson, who has millions of followers. His podcasts get disseminated, worldwide. He is a public figure that is international, and so when you see him speaking about something in what appears to be a very intelligent and studious way, it can not only fly under the radar in our own community, but especially for people who have never heard of this, to hear it coming from somebody like him that is highly regarded and is credible in their eyes. They take what he says as gospel, and it just continues this narrative that we've been working so hard to fight against. But I thought maybe what we could do, I want you to really dive into this material, but I think some people might know who Anton LaVey is potentially, but I feel like some of these names are so old that people are more focused on kind of what's current. And I'd love for you to maybe explain a little bit of history on this family and maybe a little bit about Zeena for people who that might be a little bit new on their radar, or maybe they just don't know a lot about her, but her name has come up.
Sure, I would say play the clip just to give people a little taste of what we're talking about, and then they can go back and watch the interview after.
A great idea. So I took a little clip from this interview for you guys, and that's going to expand on just kind of like a major pivot point that happened in the interview. And Jaymee can explain more about that afterwards, but I'm going to bring this up for you guys. Let me see. Okay, so this is a little clip that's going to be about 2 minutes long, and I am going to play that. So here we go.
Compassion actually broadens, and it actually you begin to develop and attain a certain level. It was just like the beginning stages when I began cognizing that, hey, something is really seriously wrong here, because there's innocent people out there that are not even Satanists, that have never even heard of such a thing. They haven't even heard of such a thing called Satanism, and yet their neighbors are calling them into the FBI and to the police and stuff, and it's just ruining people's lives.
Was that part of that daycare witch hunt, the satanic death ritual? Oh yeah, that was right.
The McMartin preschool case was, up to that point, the hugest waste of time and money in U.S. history devoted to.
Did you ever read Satan's Silence by any chance? Do you know that book, Satan's Silence?
No.
Oh, well, it was written by a lawyer and a social worker, and it's the best account that I've ever read by a large margin of the satanic daycare panic in the 1980s. It's an amazing book, Satan's Silence. Yeah, okay, so you were okay, so I get the picture more thoroughly because that was an unbelievably widespread panic.
So that's the clip. And so there's a lot to unpack there. So I'm going to hand it over to you. And you can maybe talk about, that's just a little 2-minute clip of, it was a couple-hour interview. So I'll let you kind of unpack what we just saw, and then we can lead that into, talking about the history and getting into this other stuff. And hopefully for people listening, I hope that set off a lot of red flags, because as soon as that clip came on, I was just like beside myself, like, what just happened?
Yeah, if that's the best book he ever read by Debbie Nathan, then he obviously hasn't done his homework, and or he's playing stupid, because Debbie Nathan, we went over, she's actually a professional denier. Like, she spends her entire time discrediting accounts of SRA, discrediting books, like writing articles, that, like, she's a full-time discreditor. That's what she is. That's what she does. On our last show about Michelle Remembers and the documentary that they made to discredit that, it's like, this is like a full-time job that she's done for decades. Like that is her role for the cult, is to discredit survivors. So she's a full-time paid employee to do that. And there's many of them. This is the thing, is that the cult has many people that do this full time. They have people that, I think we're going to show a clip later about people that are going on TikTok and denying things. People that are paid trolls. People, like, they have people that are working all the time to be active agents of discrediting this. So, and Debbie Nathan is like a professional to do that. So, I mean, people can look into her themselves. Again, if that's the only book somebody's going to read on it, it's like, you obviously aren't doing your homework. And I would expect more from somebody like Jordan Peterson. I don't know a lot about Jordan Peterson. I don't follow him a lot, but I can tell you that, like, when somebody just has that kind of, it's like an intellectual hubris, where they think if there was something to know, they would know it. And that because they read one book, that somehow they can have, an opinion on it. So it's the best book he's ever read. Like, has he ever read another book? I don't know. I don't see how anybody could read that one book and come to any type of conclusion over it. So having said that, I don't want this show to be about Jordan Peterson really in particularly, because I don't really know anything about him. And that's not really like the focus of my show. I think that he's just one of many people that's doing this. I think that I have some questions around some of the symbology of Jordan Peterson, and, him making the ark, and having, Noah Harari as, like Noah's Ark, and it having the same symbology as the Order of the Black Sun, with the eclipse and like the little swoosh, and, that kind of symbology is there if people want to look into it. But again, like I mentioned on my last show, being an advocate for survivors, we never know who's dissociative and how dissociative they are. And so anybody that's in the public stage acting in any way at all, we don't know, how actually aware they are, or how deliberate they are, or if they're being used or programmed, or if they have parts, if they have different alters that are, unaware of different parts. So again, I don't just like to pick people out and attack them, because I truly don't know. I'm not inside anybody's mind. Having said that, I do know one thing from what I've studied, and that is that Michael Aquino has been involved in Nazi style creation of dissociative identity disorder. And like this is something that has come up so many times. There's no way to deny this. And so when I look at somebody like Zena LaVey, who has been around Michael Aquino from a young child, I don't see what universe that would be possible. And even after she was an adult and left the Church of Satan, she was in Michael Aquino's inner order in the Temple of Set. So this woman's been around Michael Aquino basically her entire life. And what I know about him is there would be no way that he would have somebody around him that long that he, number one, didn't have complete control over, or was completely fully aware of everything he did and was right on doing it with them. And those, to me, in my opinion, it's one of those options. I don't see any other way that he would have somebody around him that long. I just don't see that possible in any universe. So like I said, this is a really big show. It connects to a lot. So to kind of, and I don't want to give glory to the Church of Satan and kind of make them seem like this notorious thing. If people want to research it themselves, I've applied a lot of links, and there's a lot of information online that people can go back and look at kind of the history of this and the history of Anton LaVey, and even the history of Zena LaVey. So, that is something that people should educate themselves on. I've read the Satanic Bible. I've also read The Complete Witch with the intro to Zena LaVey. I didn't bother reading the other books because I felt like I got the gist of it from those two books. People can decide if they want to read those books for themselves. I think the only reason to read them is to realize what a joke the Satanic Bible actually is. Like, when I read it, I was expecting it to be such a higher level of intelligence for it to have the impact that it did. Some people have said that the book was plagiarized from Ayn Rand and her theories of objectivism and things like that. When I read The Complete Witch and the Satanic Bible, it's like a religion of narcissism and how to be highly manipulative. And The Complete Witch had a lot of like sexual manipulation and things like that. And it's just really like the psychology of being a narcissistic manipulator. It's really all it is. They threw a couple other things in there, to make it sound scary or whatever. But at the end of the day, like these books, I think people think there's a lot more in there than what there actually is when you look at it. So there is a kingdom of darkness that has many different factions and many different faces. And so as a researcher, it's really easy to try and figure out who everyone is and who's the top of the Illuminati. And like, some people can do that, but I personally just find that kind of like, there's so much cross infiltration and dissociation that you're never going to like map out the entire system. It's just knowing there is a system with different factions and kind of being aware of who the factions are and how they're working is, I think, a better way to sort of approach things from what I've researched. So the Church of Satan in particular came out in 1966, I believe, and it was in San Francisco. And so it was like a really public kind of a shock value type thing, you know what I mean? Where they were like doing public rituals, like having a public appearance of overt Satanism, right? And so LaVeyan Satanism in particular is atheistic. And so it's kind of, like I said, it's like a religion of narcissism, the worship of the self, the worship of the ego. It's atheistic. It's very similar to like the stuff we see with the Satanic Temple now. It's all kind of the same idea as that, just so people know. And so basically the whole point of doing this at the time they did it was to be like a counterculture, and was to just have a shock value, and was to, bring this into popular culture. It wasn't like a type of, secret order. It was meant to be a public face. And so I always talk about in my shows the Overton window, and people should really familiarize themselves with that term. And so the Overton window is like a social engineering tactic of how they get people used to things and used to changing their beliefs and what's socially acceptable. So we see this happen with a lot of things in society, and they're really trying to do it with just pedophilia and a bunch of other things. So they introduce it and there's a shock, and then people kind of get used to it, and then they normalize it, and then they put it on a pedestal where it's seen as the ideal. That's a really brief explanation of the Overton window. So with the the Church of Satan coming out, it was kind of just a way to bring Satanism into the mainstream. And they wanted to put on a show, like it was for show, right? And so I kind of call it exoteric Satanism, where it's like a public version of Satanism, right? Where it's meant to be, theatrical. And then there's esoteric Satanism, which is really, and they're both in the kingdom of darkness and they both play a role. But a lot of, people just kind of just don't understand what those different kind of terms mean. So that was what Zena LaVey was born into. And they did do a public baptism of her when she was, I believe, 3 years old. I think she was 3 when they did it, in a public baptism where her father dedicated her to Satan. You can still look it up online and listen to it. And so, a lot of times people think this is just for shock value and stuff, and it is, but that doesn't mean that it's not like a front face of something darker going on and behind, which it is. And I can tell you, if Michael Aquino is hanging around, it is, right? And so, anyways, when, so there's Zena as a little girl and her parents, and this is like during it's connected to a lot of different things. So if people really want to go down the rabbit holes, they can look at the whole connection to Kenneth Anger and, Hollywood. And like, it's really just, there's some really good books written on it. There's, the Manson family, like it's all connected to this kind of like stuff going on in the 60s and 70s, where it seems like a lot of weird stuff happening, like with a lot of the different cults and the Manson murders and like, these different things happening in Hollywood. But if you really kind of draw out like one of those diagrams with it, you can see it's kind of all the same people that are interconnected. And we all know now from what's come out in history about how much stuff really is going on in Hollywood and how much is going on behind the scenes there, like with the pedophilia and the rituals and all that kind of stuff is kind of come out more later in later times. And so, yeah, I honestly don't even really want to talk about these people that much because I know they're narcissists and will enjoy even like having attention of talking about who Anton LaVey and stuff was. But really, he, the reason that Zena LaVey said that she left the Church of Satan was because basically the Church of Satan wasn't hardcore enough for her. It wasn't actually theistic. They weren't actually, she said her dad was a showman. He was selling priesthoods. It wasn't like a real actual theistic religion. And so she left. There's, a letter that she wrote to Michael Aquino of, she left the Church of Satan and went with Michael Aquino to the Temple of Set, which is an actual theistic religion. And so leaving so anyways, the Temple of Set, to put it kind of in a really brief nutshell, and again, people can look this stuff up themselves. They can research the belief system, and like you can go on Wikipedia, you can get a general idea of what it's about. It is theistic though, and basically it's kind of hard to explain the theology, but basically it's like this theology of that everything is one and it's beyond, above good and evil, because like, and if you want to tie it to the Bible, it's like, so then there's God. And then, so like, they would sort of see Satan as like the ego of God that could like become separate and then look back on itself and be self-aware. And so that's kind of like an archetypal energy that they like to use, and so when you look at some of the theology that like Charles Manson's teaching and stuff, it's kind of all this same idea of like that everything is one and that good and evil is like a social construct. And, it's like, so it kind of goes into this all twisting of ideas and the mind. So sorry, I know this is a lot. You guys can just follow me here. So with the Church of Satan and Anton LaVey, I really recommend that people go and look at Mark Passio's work on this kind of stuff, because he explains it really well, that what Satanism is basically there's 4 tenets of Satanism, which is egoism, and self-preservation, moral relativism, eugenics, and survival of the fittest, or social Darwinism. And so those are kind of the 4 main tenets. And so that's actually a big part of our culture right now. And so when you see people like Noah Harari saying, oh, human rights is just a story and a social construct. And so, this stuff is really important for people to understand, because this is actually the ideology that's being pushed through into our culture today. And so, it's kind of like this religion of, being a wolf and being a master and, not, helping the weak, or, it's like being a vicious, brutal psychopath and getting to the top. It's really a religion of that. And so I really recommend that we're going to include in the links. You can go back and watch the old interviews with Zena and Nicholas Schreck, explaining this ideology. And I think those are probably some of the more valuable things to listen to, because they really are explaining quite well exactly what they believe. I believe they're being really truthful in those interviews. And I think that could be really helpful to people to understand the way that Satanists are thinking, because I think a lot of times we project onto people that like what we think they mean by certain things and what certain words mean. And so especially with like saying, oh, animal rights and stuff like that. And it's like, well, these people identify as werewolves and animals. And part of Satanism is the beast in man and the visceral animal nature in man, and like not denying the parts and aspects of humans that are animal nature, right? So like, if somebody sits there and says, oh, we care about animal rights, it's like, well, yeah, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about rights for them as animals, as vicious, human animals, right? stuff like that. And also when they say, oh, we wouldn't harm little children, it's like, but their definition, because they're moral relativists, is that there is no harm, and that it's subjective, and that there's not objective morality. And therefore, like, if they have the ability to, create a slave, which we know we're going to go into more about how that's impossible without child abuse, these things are all really, really twisted in a way. You know what I mean? And kind of what bothers me about these type of interviews is, like, somebody will sit there and say, oh, we are for animal rights and not abusing children. And like, people are so quick to believe that. Like, they're like, oh, well, a Satanist told you that they don't hurt kids, so they don't hurt kids. Or, or Jordan Peterson said, read a book by Debbie Nathan, and people just believe it without question. But then when survivors try to come forward and say, like, hey, I've written a whole book on this, and it's corroborated by, like, so many other people, and this same story keeps coming up, and it all matches up and all lines up, people still don't want to believe it, right? So people believe what they want to be true, because people don't want to accept the reality of this being true. And actually, if you read Kathy O'Brien's book, like, she said, this is one of these people's greatest power, is that they know people don't want to believe this. They don't want to live in a reality where this level of evil is occurring. And so that is their greatest asset, is to be able to, they rest in confidence on that, like, even if they told you themselves what they're doing, people still won't believe them. And so I think that's why it's really important to bring attention to that today. And I'm sorry, now that was really long, so I'm just going to stop and let you ask questions or anything, but there's so much more. But go ahead and have a turn after that, because it's a lot.
Well, I'm enjoying this, and you were so studied on this, and it's really amazing listening to you taking all these pieces of all these different elements of this big picture of the different ways that Satanism has been presented to us, of these different factions of it, these different churches that have been established, and that you're able to find these really important parallels that are important for us to recognize, sort of a pattern recognition of an agenda, right, at the end of the day. And I think one of the important things that you said that I have also sort of picked out from that interview, and from what I've noticed, is a lot of the times when they do introduce something to the public, just like how Zeena said, my father wasn't, I don't want to quote her exactly because I forget exactly what she said, but she said something along the lines of, my father did have a high morality. I was, I had a very strict upbringing. I was a good kid because of him. My father was not a, the typical Satanist. He was a showman. And that, like you said, how they presented Satanism to the public back in that, 1966, which is also, you turn the 9 upside down, it's like 666. That seems kind of deliberate that it was that year too. But aside from that, they did present it in a way that was sort of like the Hollywood version of Satanism, like an entertaining showmanship of, we're not bad people. Like, we have fun, and we're a community, and we're goofy. And it was kind of like this, like a play. They don't want that truth to come out in a way, like that deep-seated evil to present itself. They want to present things in a way that does come off as sort of the showmanship, or something entertaining, something sort of friendly and benevolent, in a way. And so I think that that's an important thing. And she tried to really hone that in that interview, the innocence of Satanism, even down to the point of, in that beginning part of that little clip that I showed, where she's relating her new religion of Buddhism and the compassion that she learned, to opening that up to these Satanists, and that she can't believe that other people don't embody that same compassion, that people are calling the FBI on these people who are so innocent, and it's just like such a gaslighting tactic how they do that, how they show it, because people can't really point their finger with the public persona of it and say, well, yeah, this thing is evil, because it doesn't present itself that way. It's that way behind the scenes, underneath the cover of what it is. So I just wanted to comment on that, because I think that that's a really interesting sort of pattern too, of how evil presents itself publicly. It is like a shock value thing, like a Hollywood movie, like a blockbuster, how things are presented. It's not really like the underlying foundations aren't evident at first.
Yeah, it's a real psychological tactic. And, Michael Aquino worked for psychological operations for military intelligence. Like, this is the type of people that understand this type of social psychology. And yeah, another thing, like, so they did this, like, and they're going on the Oprah shows and stuff, and like wearing their capes, and, having the stupid haircuts and eyebrows and everything. And that, again, is another tactic, because people think that if somebody was guilty, they wouldn't go and do that, right? They think, oh, if somebody's guilty, they're not going to put on a cape and go on the Oprah show. If they're raping children, that they would never do that. And it's like, no, that's why they're doing it. That's part of the psychology, is them knowing that you think that way. So if they go out on a cape and people, and then you say, oh, a scary Satanist, but he looks like a clown, then people are like, oh yeah, that's stupid. Like, these people are just, dingalings, like whatever, right? Like, and so, but that's the whole tactic. And even with people like, another person that was a member of the Church of Satan was Marilyn Manson. And so he was like the shock rocker, right? Where he was like trying to get a rise, trying to just, make it so parents would say, oh, you can't listen. But he really was assaulting people. And, and he has his, pedophile tattoo on his hand, and you know what I mean? Like, and we see now that he was doing that same thing, like that. This is the kind of stuff that they teach in their, techniques of how to be manipulative, right? So, that, yeah. So, and, it's the same thing with Oprah Winfrey, who, I mean, if anybody wants to do their homework on her as well, is that she does that same tactic and has the whole entire time of her show, where she would have really, horrible people on her show and just interview them in a light that makes them seem different than how they are. And so, this is kind of what Jordan Peterson's doing now, with having somebody like that on and just kind of being like, oh, haha, like the daycare panic scare, or whatever he called it, right? Like, so it's that same, they're kind of doing that same thing that Oprah did, right? So it's really, really dangerous for us to just kind of assume that, there's not a tactic behind this. Something I want to address about the Buddhism. So Buddhism is a big word, okay? Like, there is so many different types of Buddhism. There's so many, I mean, that is just a huge word. So when somebody just says, oh, Buddhism, and the first thing that comes to your mind is like, oh, somebody who wouldn't even kill a spider. And like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of thing we just automatically have the connotation of a Buddhist is like a peaceful, non-harmless, harmful person. And yeah, sure. In their doctrine, there is that. And you know what I mean? There is people like that in there. And, like, those are things. But then, there's also Satanic Buddhism, right? And so actually, Kurth Barker went over some of this in his book, Blood Drinking and High Depth Satanism and Cannibalism, I think was the book he went over it in, where he was talking about, this form of Satanic Buddhism where, like, basically they don't want to be reincarnated. They think that, they're going to go into total blackness and non-existence again and stop reincarnating if they actually are so evil that they're kind of trying to undo they have a different philosophy where they're almost trying to like undo their karma by making themselves so irredeemable that they will just go into blackness at some point and escape this matrix. Or, I mean, they just have a whole bunch of twisted thinking, which I don't think I can really do justice explaining all on the show. I think people can, if they really want to understand the thinking, they're going to have to read some books. But they just have these different ways of thinking a certain way and then acting another way based on those beliefs. And I don't think people are really aware of the thinking behind the behavior. It's not going to be the same thinking behind our behavior, right? And so I'm not trying to cut down anybody that's into Buddhism. Like I said, I have a background in mental health and stuff, and a lot of, techniques like mindfulness or meditation or body scan, those things are just psychology. And, like a lot of the Buddhist stuff is just science. And it's like, they really understand, but like, you can also look at the Shaolin monks and stuff and some of the stuff you're doing, and you're like, this is crude MK Ultra. You know what I mean? Like, where they're like overcoming the body's sensation of pain and dissociating and training ninjas and stuff. Like, that same kind of techniques in psychology has absolutely been harnessed and put into these programs. Like, they, there has been so much research into this stuff that the Buddhist people have. They figured this stuff out way before science and way before anybody else. They just didn't have the same terms for it that we use now. And the CIA actually absolutely went and studied all this stuff, and if you look at the history of like even Madame Blavatsky and going into Tibet and into Nepal and like trying to, Hitler going and trying to find the Great White Brotherhood in the Himalayas, and what I mean, like, this stuff is all really connected to Buddhism. So I think just people, and then there's Confucianism and a way of life and practice. And so anyways, it's such a big term that when somebody like Zena LaVey says, oh, well, I'm a Buddhist now, you know what I mean? It's like, that's not going to be the same thing that you're talking about. I mean, even Aleister Crowley was studying, Tantric Buddhism and all of that stuff. The Masons, they have their Egyptian religion and Egyptian magic. And, this is all connect it back to the Setian stuff is Egyptian magic. And so anyways, these are just like ancient occult things that have been around forever. It's not the same Buddhism as somebody who's going around today just trying to live, live these principles in their life, right? So it's again, it's that double meaning on what words mean to people. So I think we had some pictures of Zena LaVey as a Buddhist now, and like you can just see in these pictures this total darkness coming off this person, and when they talk about compassion, it's like, yeah, it's the same as like people on TED Talks talking about the virtuous pedophiles and, oh, the poor pedophiles never get to actualize their desires, and all these ways they're trying to get you to have compassion for, these people can't help how evil they are. They just are what they are. They're just animals. They're beasts. It's animal rights. It's compassion. It's these things are very, very twisted what they're offering you. You know what I mean? So like, we just have to be really careful not to project these good qualities onto what those words mean for us.
Absolutely. And also, just words in general are different than actions. Like anybody can go write words. I get people on my different social media platforms who are Satanists who come out and they share, for example, the Satanic Temple has their own doctrine, and in that it states essentially that they cherish children and honor children and, children's rights, right? Where you listen to people on my podcast, people that Jaymee has studied and knows, and that's not always the case, 100% of the time. So, people can say nice things, but we have to get better at looking at what people do and looking at what's between the lines and realizing that, of course, bad people are going to put good things on paper and share that with us to make it seem like everything's good, everything's well. Look, it's in our doctrine. Look, it's in this piece of paper. Well, great, it's in a piece of paper, but like, what are you doing? Are you guys enacting that 100% of the time in your private life? Like, what is going on behind the scenes? Who are these people at their core? And again, you can look right here at a picture of Zeena, and just see this. She looks like a witch, you see a darkness in her eyes. This doesn't look like a holy picture to me of somebody who found the light. Like, it looks very dark just by first impression.
Yeah, and it's the same as the Shriners having the children's hospital, or what I mean. Like it's like, you guys, like, just smarten up, okay? Like, no child predator is going to tell you, oh yeah, we abuse children. They're all going to say, oh no, we love children. And again, it's like, even that word, children's rights. Like, what kind of rights? Ritual rights, like rights that Kathy O'Brien was put through by Michael Aquino, like those kind of rights. Like, what kind of rights are we talking about, right? Like, again, it's that word magic, right? Where they're telling you, yeah, we value children. Of course they do, because what it is, and whether you want to, nitpick Satanism, Setiism, all the different variations of whatever it is, it's all a kingdom of darkness. It all is the same thing at the end of the day. And it's a religion of slavery is what it is. It's the religion of masters and slaves. And there is no way to steal the will of another and make them an extension of your will, which is ultimately what a master is trying to do by having a slave. This stuff doesn't exist without satanic ritual abuse and child abuse. I keep telling people, the whole point of satanic ritual abuse is to create slaves. And this is why it ties into Satanism. Now, people want to say, people, they want to believe, they have this Hollywoodized version of people running around in capes and doing stuff in the forest and blah, 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 blah. And again, that's why I say people should really go back and watch Mark Passio's videos on Satanism and de facto Satanism, but also his presentation on Nazis and the occult is really good. It's like 8 hours long and it's worth every hour. Like, just do a binge watch on it. You take that information into your mind because it connects so much to this. And so this whole religion of slavery is so connected to ritual abuse. Like, it can't exist independent. And so something Mark Passio really points out is that the reason they have kind of these theatrical looking Satanists is to make people think it's stupid and that it's just people, doing rituals in the forest. When real Satanists are just people like, Noah Harari and stuff, who are like, human rights and just ultimately, evolving humanity into what they want it to be and having a power differential over people with knowledge and people without knowledge. And, it is this survival of the fittest. And you can see, actually, I think he's a really good example of a Satanist, and without having a cape and everything, right? But we know from studying ritual abuse, like there is a purpose to the capes and the rituals in the woods, and that stuff is happening. And the whole purpose of that theatrical stuff is to scare little children. And the reason they need to scare little children is to create the dissociative identity disorder in order to have their slaves. And so, yes, these Satanists are going and doing stuff like that, but not for the reasons that you think. The real work that the Satanists do is very corporate. It's very, it's connected to the police. It's connected to these government orders. It's connected to the military. It's connected to so many different things. But there's always the place for theater. And so they're basically, they're doing the same type of psychodrama on us that they would do in these type of things that they do to program children.
100%. And it's the same tactics that Hollywood uses, which with putting, whether it's predictive programming or putting actual things into a fiction format. So that way, when it does come up in real life again, that's how it's portrayed in Hollywood too. So you watch a movie of all these people in capes, and then a child comes forward or an adult survivor and talks about this, and people automatically just discredit it because that theatrics of how it's been presented to us. It's not taken seriously and presented in a serious way. Like you said, showing the front personality of the person going to work with wearing a business suit and talking very intelligently and making a good income. And then on the back end, they are going into the woods and wearing these costumes to frighten children, and so we're just shown kind of like the front end of that. And then the back end is shown as fiction, and in a very theatrical way. And so people can't connect that those two could possibly be related because the front and back of these personalities and of this, dissociative system that these people have is so unbelievably different. The two paths that work in tandem with each other to make sure that we stay blind to all of this.
Right. I mean, and like Zena's out doing rituals, invoking Kali, and she has the Sethian liberation movement. And, like this person is blatantly, doing rituals, and you know what I mean? But then so people just, it's just so, just got to wake up, you guys. Like, obviously it's like so right in your face. Like, don't just believe what somebody's telling you when look at their actions. Right.
Yeah. She literally talks about that. One of the things that stood out too, I just want to talk about this real quick because it reminded me of so many testimonies of people who have come on. She had talked about how her father and their Satanist groups get together and do rituals. She didn't go into details, but she sort of alluded to sexual rituals. And then afterwards she said, yeah, and then there's these after parties, where after the rituals, they go in and party together. And that is consistent with satanic ritual abuse survivor testimonies that present it that way and say, yes, there is an event where it's an organized ritual. There's the people that are dressed up. There's the different characters in a sense. There's the traumatizing and sacrifice. And then afterwards, there literally is cocktail parties where they go and party afterwards. And so she is describing satanic ritual abuse, just making it seem, a little more like light and fluffy, and that it's just kind of like this party and cocktail party get together, this like kind of silly, benign thing, but like when you can understand like what she's actually saying, like she's literally talking about satanic rituals.
Right. Yeah, 100%, Emma. So I kind of just want to give a little bit of background here of this particular kind of group. So, we know that there's been a form of ritual abuse around since the beginning of time. Okay. There's always been people who have known how to use trauma to leverage control over other people. Like that, it's been around in different forms. And, there's been different occult groups, a lot of them Egyptian, actually. Like the Egyptians were creating slaves by using a form of trauma-based mind control, and hypnosis and all these things, all these ancient techniques. Like this has been around forever. But we do know that it really got mechanized and made into a scientific formula and applied science with Joseph Mengele and the Nazis in World War II, when they had unlimited test subjects and were able to basically also have the modern use of, chemicals, medicine, or whatever, drugs, and electricity, right? And so this is when, the MK Ultra really, like, they figured out really just how to do it perfectly. This many volts, this many minutes, this time at this exact age is gonna have this exact outcome, right? So they did that. Joseph Mengele figured it out. He's been going around training people all over. They brought these people over in Project Paperclip. Mengele was training trainers. We know that the military does it, the mafia, the Vatican, the Mormon church. There's multiple groups that have figured out how to use satanic ritual abuse. Satanic ritual abuse is always a trauma base and a theme that's used, whether people believe in it or not, because it works. It serves the purpose to scare children, whether people actually believe in it as theistic or not. It doesn't matter. It still is a trauma base that's used even by military groups. It doesn't really matter what people believe when they do it. It's still going to have the same outcome when these types of themes are used. And so if we go back and so the sexual abuse is the most powerful weapon that these people use to create slaves. So there's no better way to fracture a human being than to sexually abuse it before the age of 5 by a person in authority that's supposed to be a protective figure in their life. Like scientifically, that is the most harmful thing you can do to a human being. The mind absolutely can't comprehend it and will fracture. And so this is really, really key to everything. So none of this is possible without the sexual abuse of children under 5 by people who are supposed to protect them, namely a parent or a parental figure. Heinrich Himmler of the SS did a whole bunch of research on multi-generational sexual abuse of families and children. And they figured out that this is the best way to create slaves. And so this research that Heinrich Himmler did on sexual abuse has been carried forward and used through different groups. And so you see in the 60s, after World War II, when a bunch of these people that had this technology of abuse and sexual abuse and all of these techniques that the Nazis figured out, they came over to not only Canada and the US, but also South America. And so when you see a lot of these cults happening and starting and communes and all these things, and there was so much of this in the 60s, and this connects to like Charles Manson and all of it, but like he's not the only one. There's all kinds of this stuff was happening in the 60s, but a lot of it was based on Nazi research. And that's kind of why a lot of these cults always end up being like sexual abuse cults and sex cults and stuff, because they always start introducing that, because it's so key to the mind control and to making a person kind of like able to be enslaved. Like they've figured out that like once you do that to somebody, it's so damaging that they lose like a sense of self and agency and all of these things that are really conducive to enslaving them, right? And so that's very specific why they do it. I mean, there's a whole history of it through the Vatican and stuff. Like it's about slavery. I keep telling people that, like, yes, there are people that enjoy the perversion of it, but it's a means to an end. It's part of creating slavery. And the kingdom of darkness, call it Satanism, whatever you want, it is a religion of slavery. It's a religion of hierarchy. It's a religion of masters and slaves and a hierarchy. And so people kind of think, like the Church of Satan was like, and Zeena says it herself, like her father was like order and law and order. And, Zeena was dating a police officer, and Anton LaVey worked for the police. And, and Mark Passio will tell you, like the police, they call them the trained dogs of the occult. They just take orders from their masters as part of the cult. Like there's such an involvement in it. It's not a religion of, freedom and sovereignty and, all these things that sometimes people attach to this archetype of Lucifer of like, oh, he was a rebel and he just wanted to have his own, do his own thing. And you know what I mean? And like this, so they kind of project that out. And you see this with the Satanic temple, right? Like you can, make your own rules up and be who you want to be. And these people are really deceived, because if they really understand the religion of Satanism, it is a highly ordered hierarchy of slavery. So anyways, back to World War II, we have Heinrich Himmler, we have Joseph Mengele, we have, these people learning these techniques. They start programming people en masse. It takes about 30 years. Normally people's memories are starting to bleed through. So we see in the 1980s, there's a boom, the satanic, stuff is coming out, which they call a satanic panic. But the reason that happened was not just randomly out of nowhere. It actually was because a whole bunch of people were ending up in psych wards, having memories come up around the age of 30. And so it could just times up perfectly with the end of World War II, which is when Aquino was born. There's a lot of controversy around Michael Aquino, who his real dad was. Like, they're assuming he's a child of an SS, but like there's different theories. Some people think there's a lot of different theories of who his father is. I don't know. I did look at Rotting Jewels, did some good the girl that has Running Jewels. She did some really good stuff on the background of Aquino that I think people should go look at if they want. Anyways, so this, has been carried forward into these programs. And so the way that Michael Aquino is so involved in it is because if you start looking at any of these cases through history, his name's coming up again and again and again, because he is a professional programmer. Okay, so he is somebody that understands the application of trauma-based mind control, and he also understands how to use electricity. And if you look at the SS symbol, it's like two lightning bolts, because it is electricity. It's the power of electricity, right? Like, and so we know in MK Ultra they're using a lot of things like stun guns, tasers, electroshock, ECT therapy. You know what I mean? So like the electricity in the brain is such a major thing. Michael Aquino is also in the military, but his specialty was on electronics and mind control. And so a lot of this technology going on now of like frequencies and the gang stalking stuff and everything, this is the type of stuff that Michael Aquino was involved in, this type of technology of how different frequencies, electromagnetism, things like that affect the brain and make people more, suggestible or entrained, or, the kind of really technological side of MK Ultra. However, it's always combined with the severe abuse of sexual assault, right? And so there's so many survivors that have named Michael Aquino as a child rapist and a sadist and a professional mind controller. I think you've probably had multiple people on your show. I could, I don't know. I'll just stop and let you talk straight. I feel like I'm just talking straight. I'll give you a go.
No, thank you for laying this out, because, we've been lied to our entire lives about history, even down to what the Holocaust was. Most people believe it was sort of a random act of violence that people just randomly got together and were like, hey, let's just go, off a bunch of people randomly because we don't like them. And granted, it does seem like, there was specific people that they were looking for, specific demographics of people. But as we know, there's specific demographics of people that are very important to this, the research that they did and the people that they're currently still targeting for these programs. There's certain indicators biologically, physically, emotionally, mentally, that they look for, right down to bloodlines. So when you can understand all this, you see like how not random all of this was, and how, like you said, how well they were able to, establish so many different scientific markers and parameters with the experimentation that was able to be done in that time, and really looking at it that it was allowed to be done, that this was encouraged, and that afterwards it was so revered, which people don't realize too, because the public perception, again, words, was, oh my gosh, this is so horrible, a genocide, when behind the scenes it became this public interest worldwide, where everybody then wanted a piece of that pie and said, I want these people to come to my country now. If you're not allowed in your country because what you did, like, we're hiring you over here. Like, we want a piece of this because we see how powerful that, the human brain is through the research that you did. We want you to be able to continue that here, And so whenever we realize that, like, it sort of takes that randomness too away from an event that has really touched us because how it's been presented to us, and we can start really seeing the deliberation behind these different events and these different things that happen, and then we can tailor that to the events that we see everywhere, right down to 9/11 and different ways that they found can fracture people, in a microscopic way or in a major way, in society too, and like how all of this research that they did has really proliferated, globally, and the different ways that they've been able to utilize this weapon against us without us even knowing.
Yeah. So Michael Aquino went to the Wewelsburg Castle in Germany, where the Nazis had the Hall of the Dead and were doing their rituals there. And he did a ritual which he believes that Set spoke to him, and that's when he left the Church of Satan and made the Temple of Set. So basically the people that left the Church of Satan, it's because it wasn't like satanic enough for them, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like they actually wanted a real satanic church. And so it's interesting because I just wanted to let people know that Russ Dizdar, who wrote The Black Awakening, actually went to the Hall of the Dead and did spiritual warfare right where Aquino did his ritual. And so I just wanted people to know that Russ Dizdar did that. And I think that's really awesome, something that he did. And I just want people to know that he did it, because he did. He went right in there. And I think his friend Tom Dunn could tell the story way better than me. And I tried to find a clip of it, actually, and it looks like it's been scrubbed off the internet. It is on one of his podcasts where he tells the whole story. But anyways, he did go there and do spiritual warfare to break that, what was done there. And so I just want to tell people that he did that. Another thing is that Colin Ross, which people can have their own opinion about him, but he did write some books about ritual abuse from a clinical perspective. And his book was called the Osiris Complex, right? And so the Osiris Complex, if you look at the mythology of Set and Osiris, Set actually split Osiris into a million pieces, right? And so when you look at the Temple of Set and you look at multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder, that is like Set smashing somebody into Osiris. So like their religion is to break the psyche of a person, you know. If you want to slant that into a Buddhist way, it's like, well, having no ego, it's like, yeah, in the sense of dissociative identity disorder, no ego, right? Like it's like there's so much layers of evil to this, that if you break down again these words that we think mean one thing, it's actually all there for you to see. What their religion actually is to enslave people through trauma-based mind control. Now, I actually do have compassion for Zeena, because she was literally born into a group of psychopaths and dedicated to Satan at the age of 3 by her father. So like, and that's just what we see publicly, right? So like, I do have compassion for the fact that this person literally was born right into a lion's den, literally, and programmed with her belief systems from her entire life, and had that psychopathic behavior normalized. Now, I watched some more of the interview with her, and it appears to me that she has started to figure this out, because she was married to Nicholas Schreck for however many years. And so this woman has literally just been around psychopaths like her entire life, and fairly intelligent psychopaths, right? So, I mean, I do have to give this woman some credit that she's managed to get away from, you know, the certain influences in her life. And it sounds like she's actually started to research some of this stuff and understand, you know, the dark triad or the dark quadrad, or, you know, things like that, which I think everybody should Google those terms and be very, very familiar with what the dark triad and the dark quadrant is when it comes to psychopathy, Machiavellianism, narcissism, and sadism. So I think Zeena is starting to understand some of these things. However, and I don't know, I'm not inside of Zeena's mind, but I don't know how much she's really aware of everything that's happened to her, because I'm telling you right now that having like Michael Aquino around you from being a young woman and then being with him an entire life, like, I mean, I don't know if Zeena actually knows everything that's happened to her. I don't know that, okay? When I look at Nicholas Schreck, and they both have, you know, the leopard print and the blonde hair, which is symbolic of monarch training. Nicholas Schreck's father was also in the military. And so you look at this military connection, you look at the Nazi connection, you look at this whole connection, you know, to the Order of the Black Flame that Russ talks about in his Black Awakening book. It's the Order of the Black Sun, which the symbology is everywhere. Like even in Jordan Peterson's arc, it kind of looks like that little eclipse. And so if you think of, you know, astrotheology, and so, you know, Christ is the sun, and you know, and I'm not saying that astrotheology negates Christianity. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying the symbology is there. So like a black sun is like an antichrist symbology, because it eclipses the sun of Christ. So it's like the antichrist eclipses. So when you see that symbology of the black sun, it's like, it is that idea, right? And so the Setian idea of that being the ego of God and eclipsing the sun, it's like all very much like in the symbology, but it's just different terms for the same thing, right? However, I think it's important to be aware of the Order of the Black Sun, because this is basically the group of people that's attempting to do the great reset. Think about that word, the reset. So this is the Aeon of Set. This is what they're trying to do, right? Is bring back the Aeon of Set. And so I think it's important for people to just understand this to a level. I don't think everybody should go and waste all their time reading Michael Aquino's books. And that's something I'm trying to do. Like you said, somebody has to do it, but I don't think everyone should do it, because it's not, I don't think these people even deserve to have their ideas in everyone's minds. Like, right. But the Order of the Black Sun, I mean, that symbology has been everywhere, right? Like it's everywhere. It's on school shooters. It's on, yeah, there's Order of the Black Sun. I mean, this is everywhere. That's the same symbol on the floor in the Hall of the Dead at Aylesbury Castle. This second one that you're pulling up here with the kind of Z with the line through it, Zeena still spells her name with that symbol, right? If you look at her webpage now. So like, obviously she's still in the kingdom of darkness, because she's still spelling her name with the same symbol that, they're being shown with all through, since the 60s, right? Like there's pictures of Nicholas Schreck with this symbol on him. There's, Boyd Rice has this symbol. Like it's, the symbology is always there. And a lot of times people think that the symbol of Saturn, like a lot of people have caught on to that symbol, like seeing the swoosh or the little, like, it's always there, the circle with a ring around it. But actually, if you turn it on its side, it's actually an eclipse, right? It's like, it's not a circle with a ring. It's, sorry, I'm trying to explain this right, but it actually is a sun in front of a sun, and the black sun. And so if you look at a lot of like websites, if you look at a lot of corporate logos and stuff like that, you will see the eclipsing sun like being over everything. And this is all the same thing that's connected to all of this. Again, I don't recommend getting fixated on trying to map this all out, because you'll just drive yourself crazy and it'll take forever. Like, I mean, just get the idea that this is happening. This is a group, this is coming forward. There's different people involved in it. And, this is like Klaus Schwab's coming out in his black, order, he's coming out in his outfit, you know what I mean? And Aquino also worked with programming, like doing Star Trek, Star Wars types programming for people. So a lot of people that have, MK Ultra programming with the Star Trek themes, like that stuff was, Michael Aquino was working on that. And so like we see kind of this stuff happening now. And I don't want to go into like world leaders and stuff now, but we can see this kind of Star Trek theme being played out, a lot of it. And so it is really connected to the Order of the Black Sun and them kind of doing this, again, theatrics on the earth, right? They're doing this theater that is all connected to the same type of stuff. So just to something to keep your eyes open is that symbology of, the Order of the Black Flame, the Black Sun. But yeah, when I look at Nicholas Schreck here with his blonde hair, and I look at Zeena with her blonde hair, and the leopard print, and like this is all monarch symbolism. I really don't know how much Zeena is aware, but I think that somebody that's been around the people she has and involved in stuff that she has for so long, from my research, she would have to be aware at this point. I wouldn't believe that somebody like her could remain completely dissociative. So the way that these cults operate is they basically do ritual abuse, in vitro, or sorry, like in utero. Like they will do stuff to a baby in the mother's womb. Like, people can read Folly's books if you want to learn about that. It's really dark stuff, but I mean, you can learn about it if you want to. They start splitting the psyche of a child, as it's forming in the womb through electricity, electroshock. This person is programmed from life, basically to have dark occult altars. Again, this looks like sex kitten programming. I mean, it could be taken both ways. It could be little devil horns, but it also reminds me of a cat. So it's like, so basically what they do, they take these children really young, they give them dissociative identity disorder. They basically have cult loyal altars that they can use for whatever they want and program. And then at some point, and there's different ages for different cults, but around the age of 13, like they normally want this person to choose to be in the cult willingly. However, it's not fully willingly, because they have something called strategic integration, which is where they can give people back parts of their memories, with hypnosis and techniques that they are very familiar with using. They can give them back kind of the knowledge of what happened, but they still dissociated off the actual pain and stuff. So this is how, when they put people through this trauma and they're dissociative, at a certain age, they kind of give them back the information, but they still dissociate it off, like the pain and the suffering. And so this is kind of a way that a person can think, oh, well, it wasn't that bad that that happened to me. I just got put through programming when I was younger, and now I'm smarter and part of this elite group. And so it was for my benefit that I had this stuff done to me. And this is kind of how they can go and do it to somebody else and not fully, they haven't fully like gotten everything back of what happened to them, because if they did, they wouldn't be able to still go on with this. So this is like really textbook thing they do with people in the cult to actually bring them kind of on board conscious, but it's not really true consciousness. It's just parts of the consciousness they want you to have enough to still stay a part of what they're doing. That's what I would assume somebody like Zeena would have to have, that level of knowledge. I can't say though for sure. I just know nobody's going to be around Michael Aquino that long without being fully like controlled by him.
100%. Yeah, you can tell that this is a family likely that is all programmed, and that the people that they were around were also prolific programmers. And like you said, Michael Aquino helped champion a lot of what we know today, in modern MK Ultra. Without a lot of what he did, we might not be as far as we are now. And you can see a lot of that in his work, like you said. And again, not that everybody has to go read it, but there's a lot of indicators of his knowledge of this in a lot of the work that he put out. And, it's clear whenever you listen to survivor testimony, how many people, he was able to have hands-on practice with, how many survivors were victims of his. He was just fed and fed and fed kids.
Yeah.
So I feel that same way, and I have levels of empathy too for people like her. And it's really sad whenever you think about, that she is, if she is even a little bit aware, she's probably still being programmed on the back end and reaccessed.
Yeah.
And in a sense, she's being used.
Oh yeah. She has her whole life.
Yeah.
Like, look at her dad pushing her out to the forefront to be a spokesperson for the Church of Satan just because she's really beautiful and stuff. Like, she was just used as a pawn by psychopaths her entire life. Like, truly,
You see it still. Like, they're still trying to do that. They're still using that PR persona of hers and her looks and her, she's a very sophisticated talker. She is intelligent, They're using that, and they're using her wittingly or unwittingly. And it's really sad to think about, she's a lot older now. She's not a kid. And like, even still at her age, like, she's being pushed to be a public figure for a narrative that they want to continue covering up, and they want to direct it and use her as a method of control for that.
Yeah. And with the whole Buddhism thing, like, I know that, Michael Aquino was in Vietnam and these different places, and where he was learning about Buddhism, and it's a big part of what he uses in his MK Ultra programs. And so I think there's actually a lot, I don't know, like, I've heard a few people, but there is actually like Buddhist MK Ultra programming, because it's a way for people to like keep themselves hypnotized, to to avoid looking inward. It gets a little more complicated because meditation is looking inward, but like, so with people that are trying to undo MK Ultra, like, there has to be communication between parts, and so they can be programmed to always be looking outwards for threats and stuff, when like they need to be able to go inwards and like not avoid what's inside of them, right? And so you could use a lot of Buddhist techniques in a way that would be conducive to keeping somebody in a trance and auto-hypnotizing themselves and avoiding looking within and avoiding, maybe alters trying to speak to them internally and stuff like that. So like, when I think of somebody, if I had to think of like a perfect pet project of Michael Aquino, I mean, obviously he's going to train somebody to do like their own thought stopping and to do their own, go meditate if you ever start having, memories come up and stuff like that. It seems like a perfect way to have somebody programmed to just keep themselves like that way later into life to avoid breaking down. I mean, it just, to me, that's just a real red flag. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, this stuff, it's not, it's like, it can be used for good or evil. It's not exactly. Just, you know what I mean? So I don't want to like offend anybody, but I'm like, totally. Oh, all Buddhism too. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that somebody like Michael Aquino could absolutely use all of these techniques for part of trauma-based mind control. Like, absolutely. And anyways, here's his books. He has a couple: Mind War, Find Fair, Mind Star. This is the kind of stuff like he's really laying out for you right in you. He just wants to basically be able to use mind control to affect the external world without having to use violence or force. This is his whole thing, right? Is how can you just use mind control to have your will done through others? And this is what MK Ultra is, right? Like this, they want to program in their worldview into other people so that people believe it's their own ideas and do it themselves because they don't have access to their own mind. This is the magic they're talking about. Like if these people were so powerful with their magical techniques, like they wouldn't need to rape children to accomplish what they need to accomplish, right? Like, I mean, let's just be realistic here of how the only true power these people actually have is the fact that they're willing to do things that people with a conscience wouldn't do, right? And so the fact that they're willing to do it is actually where the power differential comes from, because most people wouldn't do it even if they could get the outcome they want. And so again, they use kind of all these religious ideas and ideologies to just basically do cognitive behavioral therapy, where they're like, if we just think of it this way, then we can do it because we're reframing it differently. Like if we reframe it as, oh, we're evolving this person by applying trauma to them, then it's not actually abuse, and then we can do it. And so it's like we just have to be careful of how these ideas can all be used to slant and justify doing things in different ways. The other book that unfortunately I had to spend money on, and it's huge, and I'm there's a lot in here actually. There's a lot in here about even Michelle remembers and stuff. So I will be updating on this book by the time I get through it. I will share what I learned with it because he's actually kind of given me quite a bit of good information in here that I don't think he meant to. But yeah, so this book, obviously, he, after the Presidio daycare, where Aquino was actually accused of sexually abusing and doing satanic ritual abuse on, I think it was, I don't want to say the number, sorry. It's like, I think it was like quite a few kids, 100, something like, a lot. And this wasn't the only daycare. This was daycares all over military bases. As we know from the National Security Act, this was actually part of programs to create military level slaves. You know what I mean? And so satanic ritual abuse is used by the military, okay? Like Michael Aquino made tapes with Kathy O'Brien of how to create a sex slave that were used as training tapes for other members of the military who are learning this technology, okay? Michael Aquino also wrote the Chaplain's Handbook, which is a satanic handbook for the military. The actual religion of the military is Satanism. They have a satanic handbook that's used in the military. I know people have a hard time believing that, but they can look it up themselves. We can also look at Carrie Olajay's story, where she had military level people using satanic ritual abuse on her and has named her abuser. But I can tell you, somebody like that would have been trained by somebody like Michael Aquino, okay? Michael Aquino was the person who had this technology on the military bases to be going and taking children from people whose parents were in the military for this special operation, like a military level gifted program where people were willingly giving their children over to go into these special programs, whether they knew what it involved or not. This was being done with consent of parents on a mass scale. So the Presidio daycare case is something for people to look into. Okay, the children had STDs. The children identified Michael Aquino off of television. You know what I mean? So I don't, there's a whole nother show, Emma. I don't want to like blast too much about Presidio, but that's something that people can look into themselves. Same with the McMartin daycare. Okay. Why was this even in the court system for 7 years if they could just throw it away? And, just even with some of the recent WikiLeaks stuff that came out of the FBI vault about the finders, actually had new pictures of the McMartin daycare tunnels in there as well. So a lot of the stuff that was used to discredit this stuff, there's actually more evidence available now. And if anybody's watching this show, those McMartin kids are still around. If anybody wants to come forward at this time and share their story, like, it would be, so amazing if anybody that was involved in any of these things could come forward now, because there is like an army of people who want to listen and care and believe you. And that wasn't available in the 80s. And, these people are the people that know the truth are actually still alive today, a lot of them. And so, the Presidio case is something to definitely look into. I don't believe that Michael Aquino was ever convicted, but it's because of the National Security Act. Okay. So Michael Aquino, I mean, he's been named by Emma, like, I mean, we could sit here for half an hour going over all the people that have named Michael Aquino. He was involved in the Franklin scandal. He was Kathy O'Brien's programmer. I think David Schroeder had Michael Aquino as a programmer. Bryce Taylor named Michael Aquino. It was all involved. If you can watch Conspiracy of Silence, Michael Aquino was involved in that. It's endless names of Michael Aquino. And this is the kind of stuff that is just so ridiculous, because in his book, it says, they'll say things like, oh, out of 1,200 accusations, none of them were ever proven. And it's like, yeah, but there was 1,200 accusations. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, this is the kind of stuff that people need to wake up to, right? It's like, I think we had a clip that was sent to us of a girl that was putting stuff out on TikTok saying, oh, nothing's ever been proven. And, they have like people like Kenneth Lanning and Debbie Nathan and these Kerr Coulihan that, sit there when their job is to protect children for the police department. And they sit there in their spare time and write articles discrediting child abuse. We know that the way the law has been, that if people actually bring up ritual abuse, they have less of a chance of winning in court, because it sounds less believable than if they just talk about the stuff without mentioning the ritual abuse. And when people make big statements saying, oh, this stuff's never been proven, it's like, okay, on top of the fact that there's so many accusations that there's like no way that could be a coincidence, same people saying the same stuff from all over the world for a long period of time. The fact that this stuff isn't always publicized, and the thing is like, it is publicized. Like, I've read books from Canada, from small towns in small town Canada in the 80s, in the 90s, there's court trials. This stuff, it's absolutely not a true statement that there hasn't been convictions of this stuff. Like, when people say that, it's an absolute just lie.
100%. And if it's okay with you, I want to show that TikTok clip, because this, as we were talking about earlier, the mainstream media, just because you're not watching TV, it doesn't mean that it's not duplicating itself into these different platforms that reach a lot of people, and I also don't think that it's not intentional, that say platforms like mine that show the opposite side of it, that say, no, that I think we need to investigate this further. Like, look at all these claims of people saying that this is true. Oh, you're terminated. Where, you see somebody like Jordan Peterson, or this person that I'm going to show on TikTok, they're not only staying up, but they're being fed a lot of people to see these different narratives, and there's nothing happening to their accounts, So I just want to show this. It's a short clip, but it just shows like another way that this information is being disseminated wrongly. And, disinformation is coming from all different angles, even from these like influencers that, are posing as sort of these like independent reporters, like sharing the truth online. So this is—
Why would somebody do this? Why would anybody go and want to discredit claims of child abuse? There's no motive other than to cover it up. Like, nobody would neutrally even take an interest in doing this, in my opinion.
Exactly. And I want to give it a shout out to Kibby Linga. She was who I believe sent you as well. She found this account and sent it, and it's helped sort of open our eyes to different ways that people are, posing online as being sort of experts on this. So essentially, just to, if you're listening and you can't see this, there's an account on TikTok called Knitting Cult Lady. And she made a video responding to a survivor's comment that says, I am a survivor of SRA during the 80s and 90s. And so you see the comment on the video, and then you see this influencer looks like walking outside. So I'm just going to play this clip of what she said.
So here's the thing. Nobody is a victim of the satanic panic, satanic ritual abuse in the way that people are saying, because that didn't happen. It was made up in the 80s and 90s. It became a real panic. The police really looked for people and put people in jail. Those people were victimized. Psychologists and conspiritualists really got on board and started convincing people that satanic ritual abuse had happened to them. It was made up. There were no giant satanic cults that were going around ritually abusing children. It was made up by whom? Christians and Mormons and all of these people that were trying to justify their own cultic thinking. Now, does that mean that some children were not abused by adults who did satanic things to them? Of course, it doesn't mean that. Of course, there are children that have that happen to. Does that mean there are not children who were ritually abused in some way? Of course there were. But it wasn't satanic ritual abuse. It wasn't this thing that was implanted in people's heads that made this big panic. This would be similar to saying, see, Pizzagate was real because this person was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. Sucks that they were trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. Pizzagate and the whole deep cabal of pedos, that was made up. Nobody was abused by that because that was a made up mass panic. And we know that about the satanic ritual abuse. And nobody, by the way, not one human has been able to show the scars of being flayed open and the different things that were supposedly done in satanic ritual abuse. There is zero zilch physical evidence that it ever happened. Teal Swan did not spend 12 hours sewn into a corpse. That's made up.
So I think it's ironic too that the people that are presenting this information are occultists. You see Zeena, this lady literally has the word cult in her TikTok handle, knitting cult lady. Like she's sharing that she's in a cult and she's replying to an actual survivor saying your experience didn't happen. And that is where this gets dangerous because that lady had about 7,500 likes on that video, which probably means that it was seen, hundreds of thousands of times by people on TikTok and shared probably, dozens and dozens of times. And if that's somebody's first experience hearing about satanic ritual abuse and hearing about, ritual abuse in general or the satanic panic, they could pick that up, and just see that on their video in a little 2-minute clip and think, oh, well, that has to be true because this person said it without any background, without knowing anything. And that's why, like, the danger is, like you said, they depend on our ignorance to be able to continue the lies. They are depending on us not finding somebody like Kibby or not reading the books that you showed us to prove otherwise and to see the other side of the story. They're dependent on us looking to an influencer or a big podcaster or somebody with a big platform or something popular and getting our information from that and stopping right there. And it does such a disservice. And the fact, like, it just broke my heart that a survivor was like reaching out to her and saying, no, wait, like I can share otherwise, that like I was a victim of this in the 80s and 90s. And she made a whole video gaslighting her and all these people liked it and were commenting and stuff. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is so terrible that like we're letting that proliferate. Yet when I put a video up on my TikTok, I have like a warning on my account that if I get one more strike, my account's terminated. I just had my YouTube terminated. Like she's allowed to go gaslight an actual survivor who's sharing an experience. My videos get terminated whenever I share the opposing view of no, wait, this is real. So you see like this war is silently happening online, on the internet. They're utilizing, they're weaponizing disinformation against survivors, just like how they did in the 80s and 90s. The same thing as the satanic panic. It's just they're using a different method to do it. They're using people that the public might think are credible, and they're targeting it from all these different ways, using a clinical psychologist or somebody who might claim to be like a cult expert, or somebody that I don't even know what her story is. I didn't look into it, but she literally has the word cult in her freaking handle. So it's like, that's probably not good news. It's probably not somebody we want to get the news from. A clinical psychologist who read one book on the satanic panic, it sounds like, by, like you said, a complete gaslighter and like an occultist herself, like somebody who was cult active. Like we're getting our information from these sources, and like that's like where we're just stopping with this. Like this is a threat to our movement, and the fact that like it's sort of sliding between the cracks a little bit is really concerning, and like I said, we're so lucky that we have you here, Jaymee, to sort of be able to see these things that sort of fly by and look. The perception of it is, again, Jordan Peterson, like a clinical psychologist, somebody with millions of followers, like that can have a tremendous impact on our movement if people like that are getting up and disseminating that type of message to the masses. They have the ability to reach a lot of people that are very new to this, that are very impressionable, that literally look to Jordan to get their news and their information, and they're devoted to his podcast and a believer of him, and this is just it's a crime, that this is happening, and we need to get better at not just recognizing it, but like really fighting against it, and calling it out, because it's not true, and they're using our ignorance against us, just like how you were saying earlier.
Yeah, and it's like repetition, right? And just using those phrases like satanic panic and daycare scare and never a case, never a case, never been proven, never a body found. It's like, that's not true. That's, you know what I mean? And these people make these really bold statements as though, like, how would that girl know anything? She doesn't even look 30 years old. Like, I mean, how does she has no firsthand knowledge of something not happening, but they make these bold claims that, if, or people think, even somebody like Jordan Peterson, who, like, hey, if he ever wants to debate and he ever wants to learn, like, I mean, absolutely, he can just ask and we will explain all of this to him. If he actually wants to know, I can provide him like so much evidence and information if he would actually listen and want to learn, right? So just because somebody goes to university for psychology, they don't teach this stuff at university. In fact, they specifically teach stuff that hides it. Like, you know what I mean? I've been to university and like they didn't even mention MK Ultra. Like, you know what I mean? They don't even, like, how can you get a degree and not even like have any information taught to you about something so important in history? You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, but going to university does not make somebody smart. I've been to both. I've been an autodidact and I've wasted time and money in university. And I can tell you right now that just because people go and learn something doesn't mean they know there's everything to know. And it's so political what they teach at university. Like, especially it's dangerous when somebody seems to have credentials like Debbie Nathan being a lawyer or a social worker, or, you know what I mean? Or Jordan Peterson saying he's a clinical psychologist, as though he would know about this. You know what I mean? Because these are the type of people that could understand it if they looked at the real information and the truth and the testimonies. But like I said, I don't know what's in Jordan Peterson's mind. I just, just the fact that he would say, oh, the best book I ever read is Debbie Nathan. Like, has he read another book? Because that's actually the worst book you could ever read. I think there's just too many people out there that are respecting people with credentials, as that would somehow make them a expert on this kind of stuff. And this stuff is hidden from training with police, lawyers, social workers, counselors, hospital staff, child protection workers. Like, these are the exact people they don't want to know about this stuff. Okay. Like, this is like specifically left out of the programs, and there's stuff put in the programs to lead people away from figuring out this stuff. And, they have these people that are paid full-time people. Debbie Nathan went and just made that documentary that we talked about on our other show, where they're trying to go back in time and discredit Michelle Remembers again. Like, why, 50 whatever years later, like, why are they even bothering to do this? This is what people need to understand, the agenda of these people. You have to give the Satanists credit for not being lazy, because they do actually put a lot of effort and they do work as a team, and they actually go and do a bunch of work to accomplish their goals. And, it's like, we need to get on par with that and work together and everybody needs to be working, doing what we need to accomplish, because, people like Debbie Nathan going back and making this documentary about Michelle Remembers Later. And it's kind of funny because the people in the documentary are wearing a shirt that says Satanist with Taylor Swift on it and Zena LaVey, kind of like mocking the fact, because a lot of people say that there's the conspiracy theory that, Taylor Swift is a clone of Zeena, which, I mean, I don't know if she is or not, but it's kind of funny that in the documentary with Debbie Nathan, the guy is wearing a shirt that says that, like, to kind of mock, people, like, that everything's there for you to discover if you'd actually not be lazy and like go read a book and go research it. Like, all of this stuff's actually hidden in plain sight. And it kind of connects back actually to, there's been multiple cases, not only where people are paid to make documentaries and to write books and articles and, online articles discrediting things, but they also do like court stuff where they go back and try to get people out of jail. And so, I mean, for anybody with eyes to see, you can go and study the Memphis Three and how, Damien Eccles is, they went and all these celebrities got involved, Johnny Depp and all these other people that actually, if you go and, like I said, if you go and make one of those police charts and put all the pins on the whiteboard, it's really just a web of, not a very big group of people that are all interconnected if you really want to do the map out of it. But they love going back and getting people out of jail. They did it with the Kellers and the daycare scare. Like they love not only going back and getting people out of jail, but then they like to act like a victim after of being accused and to actually sue for defamation and libel and things like that. And you really see that in Zena LaVey when she's talking about her interview and like, oh, these poor people whose lives have been ruined by being accused of, sexually abusing children. And a lot of times they sue and get money after they get out of court. And in this book here, like I said, I've only just begun on it. And, for people that can't see that are just listening, this is a book called Extreme Prejudice, The Presidio Satanic Abuse Scam by Michael Aquino. And, he'll go and write, I'm sure he didn't write this all himself, but I mean, they'll just go the effort to make sure they're like going back and doing all this stuff. It's they do it all the time. They get people out of jail all the time and then sue, and then people like Oprah have them on their talk show circuit as the abuse victim, and like this is just typical psychopathic narcissistic behavior. And I watched the movie on McMartin this week because and like I said, that's a whole nother show. The Presidio daycare is a whole nother show. There's multiple daycare scams for anybody that cares to research it. But I was watching the show on McMartin, and it seemed to me like the defense threw the case. And I was like, you know what? I wonder how much they do that all the time, where the prosecutor really isn't in the know and believes in what they're doing and is really trying to prosecute these people. And then the cult will have this lawyer that's the defense that kind of throws the case. And then the prosecutor, like, you know what I mean? And then, but then they can go back and like be like, oh, we were wrongly accused. And the way the movie was made, like they were just like showing this poor little old lady going to jail and how it was so humiliating for her. And you know what I mean? But it's like, so people are lazy. They're going to go watch a Netflix or watch these really cheesy movies they made to try and cover this stuff up that are just so blatantly, obviously, like just so poorly made. It's so obvious. But yeah, this is a tactic they use all the time, is getting people out and using their celebrity power to do it.
100%. And, one of the things that I've really became keen on, and I'm sure you too, and it's really sad that like this patterning isn't recognized in society. And I'm going to give an alternate example that what I'm going to say, but I want to ask anybody listening, if you were to say, want to start a business, right? And you had the choice to listen to somebody who made the most successful business in the world, or somebody who's sitting in their parents' basement talk about business, who would you go listen to, right? You'd want to go listen to somebody who actually started a business, and you would probably not listen to somebody on the opposite end sitting in their basement saying, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. Okay, Trump, well, what have you done? Like you're sitting on the couch in your mom's basement, right? However, it's so inverted with the survivor community. The survivors are the ones that should be being platformed on these podcasts and on these these different social media platforms, being able to share their experience and educating from a personal experience, from a firsthand testimony. Yet, like how we saw in that TikTok video, like how we're seeing on Jordan Peterson's podcast. And again, I'm a firm believer that Zeena is a victim herself, that she could be, a survivor of all of this. However, that's not her public persona. She is a victim to being accused of this stuff. She hasn't come out and said that she is. So from the public persona, she's not a victim or a survivor. She's being attacked, right, by survivors. So I just want to share that like we should really be questioning any platform that is talking about this information and not inviting actual survivors or people like Jaymee, for example, who are well-researched, who have personal connections with survivors, who have read their books, who have studied this on other platforms. If they're not inviting people like that and they're giving a platform to people that have an agenda, in a sense, to talk against it, people from a cult, just like in that movie, like there wasn't a single survivor on that movie that was, bringing back the Satanic Panic, Michelle remembers, it was all cult members. It was all people that were opposing the survivors. Same thing, you see a survivor comment on a TikTok video, and a video is like going viral of somebody gaslighting her, and people are like, oh yeah, you're right. Like that never happened. It's like you literally are reading a comment from a survivor, right? Zeena is literally talking about survivors calling in their abuse to the FBI and police and gaslighting
Oh,
them and being given a platform to do it, right? But like we're not giving the survivor an opportunity to counter that. There's no option of Jordan having a survivor, bringing that person on the podcast and sharing. Like we're getting our information from everybody that's opposing it. So like if you're getting your content about survivors or about this movement from people who have no personal experience or who don't share the side of the survivor, even if they're not one, if they're not citing survivors in their research and in what they're saying, like you need to be questioning that, everybody needs to be questioning that, whether it's Jordan Peterson or a TikTok influencer, like, because there's clearly an agenda. If they're giving the platform to the person sitting in the basement on their mom's couch. They're not giving the platform to the business owner who can talk thoroughly about their personal experiences, right? And so that's like another conflict that I see. And it's like, this is really like one of the only topics that is out there mainstream. Abuse is like one of the only, topics where we get our information from these third parties all the time, charity owners and, these people who are talking like on behalf of them. It's like one of the only times that like that is who we're trusting with the information, that like we're not going directly to survivors for that. And so it's just like really backwards. I just wanted to like mention that because I'm noticing that all the time. Tim Ballard's another example. Like how many platforms has he been on? He's not a survivor and he has sexual abuse allegations against him. Like he's being taken to court a lot by people who are saying he's an abuser, yet he makes like this movie that goes viral, and that's like a whole nother thing in itself. But again, like we're trusting somebody like him over the person that, that actually went through abuse. Like we're not giving the platforms to the right people is what I'm saying.
yeah. And who has a motive to lie? Like, I mean, I think it was Kibby was saying, like, people are accusing her of benefit from, I'm like, any person that's come forward with this, like, they get so much abuse and gaslit and secondary, abuse towards them. And most of the time it destroys their life, destroys their family. Like they don't get anything good for it at all. And so accusing them of having some motive to lie when like, it's like, who really has the motive to lie? The abusers, right? Like, and we just need to stop. We need to stop trusting authority figures because the cult's all about authority and the hierarchy of authority and getting, people that work in hospitals, police, like getting people strategically placed in this system of abuse. It's not just a group of, it's not just like a group of two gangs fighting. Like it's like they have an organized system where they're strategically placing people all the time to work as a system for this to happen. And so they get some, person like Kenneth Lanning in the FBI to investigate thousands of cases and not one was proved right. Like really, there was thousands of accusations and that was just a coincidence of thousands of people that wanted to make this up for no reason, and it was just a coincidence. And Kenneth Lanning, who just happens to be on the documentary about Michelle Remembers with Debbie Nathan, there he is again, the same people. Wow, what another coincidence, right? Like, oh yeah, these people don't have an agenda at all. I'm sorry, but people like Kirk Cahulan and stuff that was working on child abuse investigations for the police, or Kenneth Lanning, who works for the FBI and child abuse investigations, why are they going on documentaries with Satanists trying to debunk satanic ritual? Like, what motive would they have, okay, if they weren't in on it? Like, this makes no sense. And then what was and the other thing I want to mention is that, okay, so Anton LaVey was working with police. Like during the Satanic Panic, Zena LaVey, the police were actually working with her. She was working with police. There's a book written, I think I attached the link. I can't remember the name of it. It's something about police and the occult. It's in the links. That officer was working with Zena. Like she was being like a consultant to the police and the FBI for satanic ritual abuse. Like, I mean, come on, you guys, really? Like you're going to send in somebody from the Church of Satan to be a consultant on you investigating satanic ritual abuse crimes, and you're going to be like, oh, it's okay. She said they don't hurt kids, so don't worry about it. Her and her friend Michael Aquino said it's all good. Like you guys, like this is just like we need to we need to like, you just wake up, you guys. Like, it's so, they're not even trying at this point. It's they're being so obvious. Another thing is you know, we looked into some of the stuff with Ted Gunderson, and Ted Gunderson has been involved with Bryce Taylor. He's been involved with the Franklin scandal, the Franklin cover-up. There's been a whole bunch of conspiracy around Ted Gunderson. I don't know anything for sure about Ted Gunderson, but you need to understand that, like, again, with knowing who could be programmed or multiple themselves, like, and him coming on the show with Michael Aquino and Zeena in the 80s on the Oprah show, or the Geraldo Rivera show and stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know if it's true, but I found something on the internet saying that Ted Gunderson was actually married to Zena LaVey's mother briefly, which I was like, okay, like, you guys, this is all like a theater they're putting on for us. That doesn't mean that maybe Ted Gunderson didn't have a part that was trying to tell the truth, but who knows what kind of blackmail they have on people, or, you know what I mean? Like, everybody wants to put everybody in a, oh, good guy, bad guy. But I'm like, no, you guys, it's so much more complicated when you start to look at blackmail, dissociative identity. Like, you don't really know what position people are in, or if just like a part of them's trying to come forward, or if they're like in the full know and coming forward, or, if they're being forced to come forward. Like, I mean, I don't know the inside of Zena's mind, but, I don't know who she's scared of. I don't know how much she is aware herself. I don't know if she's being blackmailed and forced to go out and do this stuff. I just want to say, though, and I think Carrie Olajay did a really good job of explaining, like, this kind of stuff with like people not wanting to be involved in stuff. And yeah, we know Zena was born into this. That doesn't make her innocent, but like, it's like looking at the complication of this, a lot of survivors have a hard time even coming forward because they feel guilty because they've had forced perpetration and stuff. And I just want to say, like, to any survivors out there, like, I forgive you, and I don't look any different at you for what you were forced to do under mind control. And that's not going to ever stop me from like embracing you if a part of you wants to come forward and tell the truth and be honest, right? Like, don't let that stop you from doing it. And so when it comes to somebody like Zeena, like, until she's willing to come forward and talk about Michael Aquino on public talk shows and talk about, then you know what? There's always a chance for people to be forgiven and redeemed no matter what. Okay. So I'm just saying, if Zeena wants to come forward and she really wants to be free and she wants, like, she can, but she's going to have to be honest, and she's going to have to come out and tell the truth about Michael Aquino, at least as a starting point. And then I will say, okay, maybe this person actually wants to be free from the kingdom of darkness, and maybe they are trying to come forward, but I don't see that right now. And I'm not going to give this person any benefit of any doubt until Michael Aquino is named as the child rapist, sadistic, mind control programmer that he is.
Thank you for that. And to elaborate a little bit on a really good point that you made about, somebody like Kibby coming forward and any other survivor that comes forward and how they get gaslit and saying, you're just doing this for attention. You're just trying to profit. You're a grifter. Like, no, the person that is grifting and actually making money are the Jordan Petersons. Like, that video that he put out with Zeena got 1 million views. Like, on YouTube, I don't know if people understand like how much money that video made him. And that it's up, like, he became more famous. He became, more well-known, like more people found him through that video. And then you look at Kibby, who has been gaslit. She has been alienated from her family. She has been attacked. Like, there's a very stark difference in how we're treating people and like who the real people are that benefit from sharing one side of the story or the other. And I'm telling you, like, it's not the survivors that benefit and that grift from this. Like, nobody wants to be a victim of this. I've never had somebody on my show that is like, I'm so freaking happy that like I was a victim of MK Ultra. They're all like, I don't want to be doing this. Like, I don't want to be talking about this. Like, this is freaking horrible that I grew up in something like this, but it's not like that for the person that's talking against it. They're the ones out there making the money for it. And then the third parties that are talking over survivors. Like, it's interesting how, the difference in like how Kibby gets treated talking about this, but then you see, again, I'll just use the same name, Tim Ballard made a shit ton of money off his movie that came out talking about, human trafficking. But like, that's not the reality for survivors. Like, the people that actually benefit and get rewarded for it are the people not bringing survivors into the equation. not the survivors. The survivors are being gaslit again to stay silent, and they're being pushed out of the narrative, and their voices are not being heard. They're not the ones making money. They're the ones that have the targets on their back. They're the ones that are losing family, friends. They're the ones that are getting their platform shut down. And, they're having trouble making money. Like, it's hard enough for a survivor to like try to survive in civilian world after realizing what their life was. And like, there's no help for them. And now they're trying to share their experience. And like, we're trusting people who don't even give them a platform to talk about it for our information. Like, it's just, we need to do better, like we need to really like help push this. And that's why like it's so important like having these conversations like what we're having now, because like if enough of us do this and like enough of us, like you said, Jaymee, like there is no need to be ashamed if you're a survivor. Like you have a community now. Like this is the first time in history where there's like thousands of people like with open arms saying, come forward and share, like you're just going to add to the puzzle, and like we have you. And of course there's safety measures, like that doesn't mean that's a possibility for everybody, but like this is the first time in history where we can override the few people who are trying to talk above the narrative, and you see how desperately like they're trying to claw their way into like providing and keeping this narrative cover up like going, that they're platforming people on somebody like Jordan. They're putting a Satanist on Jordan Peterson's platform. Like it is just so wild, like the lengths that they're going right now to like suppress this, but they're not bringing actual survivors into the equation. And so I agree with you. The point of my story is like that is just bullshit to say that survivors just do it for attention. The people that are doing it for attention are the people gaslighting survivors. They're the ones that are, and they're getting the attention, they're getting the money, and they're getting platformed, and they're getting millions of, people following them and millions of dollars in their pocket for doing it. The survivors are not, and that is 100% proven, like, period. Even Kathy O'Brien, who's been out there forever, like she still struggles. She talks about her struggles and how she's had troubles throughout her life. And, like whether it's like with work or whatever, like she's not sitting there like a millionaire because of all this. And she's been talking for freaking, 35 plus years she's been out there. But then Jordan Peterson, like, is a multimillionaire because he's talking about this stuff and like negating it. It's just so ridiculous.
Yeah, and you know what? There's no such thing as wasting resources investigating if children were abused. So for people just to kind of casually laugh off, like, oh, it's just such a waste of money to even look into that. It's like we're talking about children being raped. We're talking about people being tortured. We're talking about like the most heinous of crimes against innocent children. And so the fact that they just so casually laugh it off, or like, oh yeah, I think I read a book about that once. It's like this is not a light subject matter. This is like something really serious. And every survivor that I know has come forward, like not only has it been at a cost to themselves because the attention they do get is pretty much mostly all horrible, but it's because they care about it not happening to other children because it's still happening. And that is the motivation for every survivor that I know that's had the courage to come forward. It's because they know it's still happening and that they don't want they're doing it to be an advocate for children that are still experiencing it today, and that is the main motivation, despite what it costs them, despite the abuse that they have to endure when they come forward. It's like that is actually the motivation. And it's true, there's so much in numbers, you guys. Like I said, like a lot of these people are still alive today, and I don't know, like some of them are in their 60s and 70s, and like, you know what I mean? And even if people aren't wanting to do that and come forward, or if they've even signed non-disclosure things, which the military did get a lot of people to sign, and that's another reason why you don't hear about a lot of stuff, if they can just anonymously have the courage to even write down their story and send it into you, because you know what, it's all information that just all adds to something to be undeniable. And to me, like, these people coming forward at this time are like, it's just so pathetic that they would even come out and stand on the stage and attempt to still keep acting at this point. Like, you know what I mean? When it's just like so obvious that there's so many people that are onto them. They've been outed so bad, and they're actually just creating evidence of themselves. Like all the people that come forward and make these ridiculous movies and write these books and, have these web pages of these TikToks and stuff, they're just putting themselves on record, lying. And so they're really just, outing themselves and creating evidence against themselves and documenting it. So, I mean, go ahead, you guys. It really doesn't matter to me, but I mean, they're really just, time stamping themselves in their own lies and their contribution to contributing to the abuse of children.
Yes, and whether they want to stop this or not, like this is going to come out, whether it's tomorrow or
yeah,
10 years, like it's going to come out. And these people that are gaslighting it and covering it up, they're going to be remembered as covering up the worst crimes of the worst crimes against humanity in human history, right down to like YouTube and all these other platforms. Like they can try as much as they want, but like this is also the time too, not just for survivors to come forward, but for these popular podcasts and stuff in businesses and military, for all of these different establishments that harbored this, universities, that allowed this to happen on their campus, on the military base, people that participated in it that are now like working to cover it up, or people that are being used to cover it up. This is also the time for them to come clean, because that you're going to have a lot more forgiveness if you say, all right, I'm Stanford University, like we did this, we want to come talk about it and like wipe our hands clean. We want to help the survivors that are still out there. We want to bring justice. Like that would mean so much more to these survivors and to people that, know that this happened, than for them to just continually keep trying to shovel the lies on top of each other and just creating like a mound of lies, right? If they would just unbury it and just say, you're right, like I did participate in this and I've been actively working to cover it up. Like we would have we'd open up our arms to that and say, like, you're not in the clear, like you fucked up, but like, let's share the truth, like, let's share this, and let's make it right. Like, let's bring awareness to this and let's bring justice. Let's help these survivors that are struggling, that, were experimented on your campus. Like, this is the time too, where like, because that's going to be reflected on too, like, that's all going to be exposed along with the people that, were doing it,
Yeah.
and so
And
like,
yet, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Yeah, it just like FYI, it already is exposed. It's just a bit of a time delay before enough people take it into their consciousness for it to absorb into the quantum field. Like the testimonies are out there, the proof is out there. Like, you know what I mean? It's just a matter of a time delay. Like, I mean, even now, there's people that are born after the Presidio case and stuff that are reading these books, and so it already is exposed. And people that are sitting right now, doing things that they have to do for the cult, and whether they're pushed out to the forefront and being used as basically human shields for people way above them, you know what I mean? Just remember, there's no loyalty in the cult. Like, you will be placed out and thrown under the bus in 2 seconds. You're not getting any safety for yourself by being loyal to these people. It's already being exposed. The truth is already out there. It's only a matter of time. You're just being used still, and there is going to be no safety for you, because the people that do this, they not only have they done it to you, but they will just throw you right out to be a human shield at the front. And so we see a lot of people doing that right now. Like, even if people are under blackmail and stuff, like, it's not going to save you to comply with it. It's not going to save you to do that. Like, you're already out, just like being used as a target. So I mean, just really think about that. Like, I think really at this point in history, there's nothing left to do but the right thing. Like, really, that's the only chance you have at anything, is to just do the right thing and tell the truth at this point. There's really no hope in that any more evil machinations or lying or cover up or anything. Those aren't options that are going to work anymore. It's too late. That we already have the internet, we already have the testimonies, survivors are coming forward, survivors are getting their memories. There's a whole team of professionals that are learning how to undo this. People are learning new techniques. Laura Worley's books are amazing. She's written books that have uncovered like so much of the tree of life programming, tree of death programming, like all these programming that have been put in all survivors through all times. These people aren't creative. They've been doing the same thing to kids for so long that, this information's all coming out, and there's people learning, and there's people who care, and there's people who are learning how to do therapy with these people and learning techniques for undoing the programming. And like, you know what I mean? Like, I can say to anybody that's still involved in this stuff right now, there's nothing left to do but the right thing at this point. And I really just hope you do it, because that might be the last thing you can do with your free will.
100%. And you look at like how, I think that is part of a big reason why, of course, there's, the blackmailing, and there's all the different ways that the network tries to contain people, right? But you see like the survivors that are coming forward, like they're being embraced, like we are loving on them and like giving them full forgiveness and like listening to them. That's not going to be the case for people who don't do that. Like, those people are not going to be able to walk in the streets. There is going to be a reckoning, a hell of a reckoning for the people who just keep doing it and keep perpetrating and never wipe their hands clean of it. Like, that's not the side that you want to be on. Like, it might not feel safe coming to this side, because of course you have a target on your back. There's not whistleblower protection. Like, of course there's risks, but like the risk of not doing that it's going to be a million times worse.
Oh
Like
yeah.
you are not going to get out of that alive. You're going to have no way to have any type of life after that. Like you are going to be put away. Like there, you will not be able to walk the streets once that truth comes out, that like you knew that this was happening and didn't wipe your hands clean. But there is
Yeah.
forgiveness, there's compassion, and there's a life on the other side of healing from this if you come forward and wipe your hands clean of it and just tell the truth, like how Jaymee
Yeah.
was. I'm so happy that we got to talk about this.
Me
Was there
too.
other things that you had that to go into
Um,
this that we didn't get to?
I have a whole book of notes, and I'm sorry if that felt like I said to Emma before the show. I'm like, it's just going to be like opening a pin on a fire hydrant and me going all over the place. Because
So
for
good.
anybody that really wants to research, like I said, there's so many rabbit holes you can go down on this, like, and how it's all connected to, you know, Hollywood and Manson and the Nazis and like it's, you know what I mean? Like it's all there. I put a lot of links. I didn't want to just try and get everybody to, you know, do a university level deep dive on all this. I just kind of wanted to get the main points across. But I mean, yeah, I could go on and on about this forever. I have books and notes and books here and stuff. So I think we'll just maybe try and end it there. And like, you know, maybe we'll do another part later on with once I'm done reading the books about Presidio and stuff, because I think a lot of the daycare stuff, like even more information's come out. So I feel really good about doing this show. Like I'm just so thankful to you, Emma, for providing me a platform, because I just texted you right away. I was like, I need a platform, and you were
I'm
like,
like,
you
let's
got it,
go.
girl. And you like I just that was just so cool that I could do that, and you just instantly were like, yeah, here you go. And so yeah, I really appreciate that. I really hope people look into the links more, and just look at all the connections. It's all the truth, like I said, it's out there for eyes to see. I think that's a good place to leave it for today, and just actually, you know, just really you know, people just using their discernment, you know, like we got to get, these people are just so arrogant that they think that we're like really that stupid, that they're just going to be like, you know, that, you know, the way they just kind of casually mention it, like, oh yeah, the daycare scare, like, nice try, you guys, you're just gonna have to do way better than that at this point. Like, we're on to you. There's too many people working on it. People are too smart. People are sharing. Like, it's a nice try.
100%. And for people listening to you, you guys know sort of if you've heard her here or on other platforms, she does go on other podcasts too. If you don't know that, just Google her name on, YouTube or Rumble, and you'll populate a bunch of different interviews that she comes up with. But if you guys have like topics that you think would be interesting for her to do a deep dive on, like alongside some of these topics, like comment that too. I'm sure she's like always interested too in what you guys want to know more of. She's such an open book and like knows so much. I'm sure it's hard to like sometimes condense some of this information into like focus topics. So I encourage you guys too to drop some suggestions below if there's like something in particular about this episode or previous ones that we've done, or different things that you guys have heard her talk about. If you guys want us to do a deep dive on one of these topics or something in particular, like that would be really fun too if you guys had some ideas as well. But I would love for you guys to, just sort of look at things differently whenever you're online, and have the courage like how Jaymee does. That's one thing I love about her, is that like she's always the first one to like step up and put her foot down and be like, this isn't right, like we need to talk about this and like have a dialogue about it. And like I wish that more people would do that. And it's not the fault necessarily of all of us. Like we've all been sort of like trained to shut up and to just sort of like accept what we see. But like the more of us that do take action and like purposeful action and like aren't afraid to like stand up to some of these people, whether they have a million views, or I should say like subscribers or fans or whatever, whether they're like super popular or whether they're not, like if there's wrongdoing in the world, like that's one thing that I really take from Jaymee, is like we need to step up right now, like how she saw that interview and like right away text me. Like we should all have that reaction whenever we see something like that, and to automatically just like put our foot down. Because imagine if we all did that, like these things wouldn't be able to happen, or at least if they did, they'd be taken off air. Like we'd be able to like discredit it and like call it out and like offer a counter narrative and conversation in response to it. But instead, because like a lot of us like either don't know or we're not aware, these things do just like fall between the cracks, and it ends up just becoming the mainstream narrative all over again. So I hope you guys take a lot from Jaymee like I do, and that you guys find the same courage and inspiration and motivation that I do, because every time I talk to her, hear from her, I'm just like so fired up and inspired, and it helps me like with my own courage, and it helps me be a little bit more diligent with like having the courage to stand up for what's right, even if it like makes me unpopular, and that should be like a lesson that we all take. Like, this isn't about being popular. It's not about being liked. Honestly, it's not about any of us. Like, it's about how Jaymee said, it's about the kids still going through this, and that should take precedence over everything, So I really appreciate you, Jaymee. And like, I love just how knowledgeable you are about all this, like all the hours and time that you do. And you selflessly devote your time to doing all these interviews when you don't have to, you could easily just like be at home studying or like do it as a hobby. And like, you're out there putting a target on your back, just like everybody else. And like, you just stepped into a fight that you didn't have to. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart too, for like all the work that you do and like all the years of work, and for having the courage to publicly speak about it, because I know that it's not always easy. It's not always something that is rewarding in the way that, how some people would picture doing podcasts is. There's a lot of risk involved, and it's very controversial. It's really hard to talk about and like research this stuff like on your heart. It's really heavy. So I just want to like commend you and thank you, because you do an amazing job. You articulate things so well, and like we all have so much to learn from you. And like, I'm excited to see and hear what you learn from these different, the Presidio case and all your deep dives more on the Aquino side of things. So just thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on here.
Thank you, Emma. And I know like it can be framed as courage, but like to me, the way I look at it is, with the amount of knowledge that I have, like I fully understand that the world is not going to be worth living in the way that it's going to be if we don't do something about this. So choosing to be cowardice or choosing to try and stay safe in order to avoid the consequences of doing this is only going to enable it to create a universe where like it's honestly not going to be worth even surviving in, because you're going to be living in hell if this agenda goes forward with what the type of people who do this kind of stuff want to actually do. So it's like, cowardice is not, it might get you like a temporary delay of the consequences, but the reason that I'm just like, to me it's just not a choice anymore is because I fully understand what the consequences is going to be of not doing it. And so I just invite people to like consider that, whether you're involved in it or whether you know something and you're just scared to come forward. Like the world that these people want to create is a slavery system that is built on child abuse and torture and sexual abuse of children. And to me, that's not going to be a world worth living in if you need to avoid the consequence of speaking forward about that to survive in it, if that makes sense. So I just kind of want to leave on that. And again, thank you, Emma, so much for having me on. Really appreciate it. Just love everything you do, and so inspired from you as well. And so thankful that you are providing a platform, not just for me, but for everybody. And, it's just such a gift to just like have a place where people can come and express what's on their heart and what they want to contribute without, you putting any type of parameter on that. You just provide a space. And I love that, I love the fact that you're just like, here is, you make it into what you want. I'll just like hold it for you and let you put what you want into it and put it out for you. And, for people like me that research and stuff, it's really hard for like, I couldn't do what you do. I need somebody to do that space for me. Like I said, I'm just like a fire hydrant with stuff all over the place. And if somebody doesn't make a little place for me to come and put it into, then I probably never would. So a lot of times people don't understand how important it is for people that can provide space and can be interviewers and can have a platform and stuff, because a lot of the people that do research and stuff are really like scatterbrained and stuff, and they actually really need that like technical hands-on assistance to get stuff out. So just like never underestimate the value of doing that, because there's so many roles that are required at this time. It's a fight we're all in, and people think, oh, maybe I'm not so smart. Maybe I don't. It's like, no, but you can, everybody can do something. Everybody has something that could help somebody else, that can do something that somebody else can't do. And just don't underestimate the value of it, because anything that anybody can do to put forward anything about this, share it, like it, if you feel like, talking to some of those trolls online so that survivors don't have to do it, like anything you can do, just everybody, please, get in the fight, pick up your sword, do what you can do. And I'll just leave it there. I'll just keep talking. It's a long show. So thank you, Emma, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you guys so much. And Jaymee, just thank you. You're just such a beacon of light. And, one thing you guys could do, Jordan Peterson's interview is up. We did talk about it, and there is a comment section. So, that's one thing you guys could do. I don't encourage like violence or like trolling, but if you guys have links, or if you guys want to go comment and like share what you guys know, that's a really great way that we can also chip in, and I do encourage you guys to share this interview, to go Google Jaymee, to go on different, video platforms and Spotify and iTunes and, look up her other work. She has every single podcast she does is different. It's really amazing how she does that. A lot of people like talk about the same thing every time. And she's always like, hey, I'm inspired by this. Like, let's talk about it. And it's really cool just to see all the different topics that she's able to talk on. So you guys leave some love for her in the comments. Please share this episode. I'm going to leave all the resource links that Jaymee was talking about earlier. So go in the show notes, no matter what platform you're on. I'm going to have a bunch of links there so you guys can, do some deep dives just in very specific areas that Jaymee thought was really important. And that can help you guys sort of narrow down your own research if you guys are interested in learning more about some of this. So I'm going to have that below. I'll have all my links below. Thank you guys so much for listening. God bless you, and we will see you next time.